Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. Got it. OK です。
OK ですか。
はい、お願いします。
はい、聞こえますか？
はい、これで大丈夫です。はい、
はい、
お願いします。
画面共有します。
はい。
では、なんか、英語でもいいですか？
大丈夫ですよ。
Okay. So, today I'm going to introduce how we use CSharp scripting in Rhino inside Revit. And so first thing first, to make sure your environment has Rhino inside Revit and also Rhino 7. Do you guys all have these two? みんな大丈夫そうですか？
見えてます。問題ないです。
はい。で、パソコンで Rhino Inside Revit がありますか？はい。では、So like basically if you download, you ask your email address and then you download it, it will be a NSI. Since we all have it, I will skip this part and I'll jump into how we use Rhino inside Revit and how we code inside it. So people can see my notes in the GitHub page. I think it's this one. And here's the things I wrote it down and I think it's important. But basically, it's follow the official rules, official documents provided by Rhino. So you see, there's this page, like teaching you how to C# scripting with the Rhino inside. But certainly there are some code is very old, out of date, didn't work in these days. So mainly today's my goal is to revise the code didn't work and giving out some of my thought. So we go to Revit and you open the any kind of Revit file. And after you successfully download Rhino Inside, you should have this Rhino Inside tab. And inside this tab, you started Rhino. Then you will link to your Rhino. So be sure you have Rhino 7. It takes some time on my machine, but once you started Rhino, you can click this icon to show the Rhino Rhino documents, and also click this icon for Grasshopper. So today I'm gonna do things inside of Grasshopper, and mainly we will do C# scripting. And follow this guide, we will need to add this to library inside our C# script. So you can either see how the guides here or follow what I did. So mainly the original C# script component you'll get will be this red icon. But today we want not only using the library provides by default, we like to do our own Rhino with Revit APIs C# scripting. So according to the guides, we can find this ManageAssemblies tag here. That's what I click. So you click this ManageAssembly and add. So our current progress is to, our current goal is to add this to DLL file inside our Rhino. So where can we find it? It usually locates in your program files, Autodesk, and Revit. So we can just copy paste this previous part, and you find Revit. On my local machine, I have three versions of Revit. So you can choose either which one you are currently use. And now I open the Revit 2021. So I use 2021. And inside this folder, you should be able to find these two libraries, Revit API and Revit API UI.dll. So it's a lot of library here. So I recommend you use this keyword search to use Revit API and find the names exactly the same. So you find Revit API UI.dll. This is the first one we need to input, and the other will be Revit API DLL, these two. So once you click it, you will download it here, and you click the Revit API, you'll be here, and you should need add this too. So I think I click OK. Now it's fine. So far, any questions? Do I run anything too fast? So mainly like the way we develop APIs in Revit, we need these two libraries. And now, since we added in, we should be able to do everything. We like when we develop in Revit, we usually see this Revit API document. So now we have these two libraries. We should be able to develop everything in Revit. But apparently, we need to link the link the Rhino file to Revit. So we need another DLL, which is Revit Rhino inside Revit DLL, and this is apparently located in this on your machine. So once again, we need to add this on your scripting file. So open your ManageAssembly again and add it. You find the location, go to add-in. So this is two add-ins file, a folder I have. You choose the one you currently use, and you will see this Rhino inside Revit. Click it and find the name Rhino inside.revit.dll. So including this file as well, and you can check it. So now we all set of the libraries. Next things we need to do is either use this or not to use this. But in case, I think it's better approach to follow the guide. So I'll copy paste this, or maybe this is full, and just delete this one. So as you can see, so far we have done a lot of manually linked library stuff. But next time, if you want your CSharp script with the same thing, it's hard to it's not so convenient to do it once again. So in the official guide, it recommends to put these things as your custom object. That's what I did. So you see, I have this CSharp Script Rhino API. Is my my custom object, because once I double click it, it has everything, and open the ManageAssembly, it already has all of them. So how do we do that? You can do under the files, click the create user object, and give a name, nickname, or descriptions, and the icons. So I will do it once again. So you can do it, create user object, and maybe I name this CSharp Revit API, and also the nickname. Revit API D, and you can choose a better icon. Maybe I make it yellow this time and click OK. So next time you use C#, you have this icon, and you see now everything is all set. You don't need to do the management assembly once again. It's just a tricky method we can use. So far, everything's fine. Like everybody catch up. Okay. Okay. So the next things, everything's fine. The next things I will introduce how to C# script, and can see. Oh, also you can. Sorry. I recommend to download this Rhino inside Revit script demo. I just uploaded. It's a Grasshopper file, and it contains all the codes we need today. And I'm just gonna open it. So it's more organized. You see, there's some errors here, but I will try to tackle it. So I categorize my introduction articles in 3. So here has an example and exercise 1. Exercise 1 is about direct shape and noding code, and the next will be make rebars in Grasshopper. Yeah, so basically there's 3 topics. It's according to 1, 2, and 3. So first we can take a look what happened in this code. So you see, if the previous stage we do it fine successfully, we will have this using lines in the beginning of our C# script. And now in this file, I only use the Rhino command. So it's very basic Rhino command stuff. So we create a new sphere and give it the point and radius. It will shows in our Rhino document. So in your Rhino document, you have this currently highlight blue sphere. We can change the radius. But how can we put this sphere into Revit? So it comes to this script. So you can compare the things we did. The things we did is I put the create sphere, the Rhino command changes inside this transaction. And what is a transaction? You can look the code I provide. So basically, transactions help you. Transaction is Revit API's mechanism to make any changes inside Revit. So it should be written in this fashion. And you can notice that I have some notes here. First things, you will have a using block, something like this, and you need variables to declare this transaction. So the way you declare, you generalize a new transactions by a new keywords, and you use this constructor to make TXX a transaction. And in this transaction, it has its starts and when it finished. So between the starts and finish, you put your code inside here. So if you see here, the intention of this component I am planning to do is I make a radius, I make a sphere, and then once I click this button, then there's a sorry, I think I should better. Okay. Once I click this button, there should be a sphere in our Revit file. That it means that the link it works and successfully. So how we can do that? Can take a look about. So if the bake is the Boolean toggle. So if the bake is false, we do nothing. But once it clicked, we do the following things. And we put the change inside here. So it means that it will generate a sphere. Without further say, I think I should fix this box. So something was not correct in my, I think it's related to the, yeah. So I click this one. It's generate a sphere in our Revit file. And I think that in your machine, it should work fine because so we can look in 3D and there's a sphere. Okay. Okay. And so these tutorials help you to understand what exactly work inside it. So I will do it once again and like see if there's any problem inside the code. So you do radius and make it double, and would be Boolean. So we should make sure that at least our sphere works fine. So here I give a slider from maybe 98, and I use the function I mentioned. So new sphere. We will need the how can I say, point origin. I think it's 0.3. Oh, sorry. Origin. Should make sure your sphere located in the origin and the radius. So the radius we give it as the input. Yeah. Hard to see. So you see here's the radius. And when it goes to reroll, it may, okay, it's not arrow. Okay. So next is we will get to use button to bake. So as it says, the defensive programming you should, if the bake is false, then return means do nothing. But else, we would like to bring the list sphere into Revit. So we will need the transaction, as I said. So transaction fashion is like the something like this. So you let me take a snip a little bit. So it's new database transaction. What this DB means, you can take a look on the Revit API's document. So you see if there's a transaction class right under the DB. So what we're gonna do is to do transaction, right? And also we can take a look what the transaction actually need. So transaction has these two constructor. I believe both two works fine in our example. So we just run it once to see that currently we use the second one. So we give it a document, Revit document, and also a string for the name. But I believe we can use the first one. So do something different. I use the first one, and we can see how I gate the document. We can use document Revit.db document. But here's something needed to notice. I think maybe later. Okay. So document. In this way, I means I use the first transaction, first constructor's transactions instead of the second one. And then in this transaction, we will need a start and also the end, right? And inside this transaction, we do need the meta change. So we put the sphere, make a sphere equals to, we just copy paste the code right below. And for the A, I think I stay with the A. So, okay, here's some error. $67. If it does not exist in the current context, do you all see this error? Usually this error is because that following the guide, it says use this Rhino inside Revit as RAR, but I think it's not necessary and make the scripting component confused about the namespace. So you just delete it and it should work. And sorry, it's not start and end, it's start and commit. And now you can see there's no, okay, there's something wrong. So another thing is that usually Revit, like when you try to bring a geometric from Rhino to Revit, you should paste by like direct shape. So we need this function, and we just pass it here. And what is this function said is we need to identify the document, like the current documents in Revit. So every time you see this DB means since works in your Revit file, and also the radius from your grasshopper. And then in your Rhino words, you create the geometry, like you create a shape, you create a sphere, any kind of shape. You make it as a B-rep. So there's a point that B-rep boundary representations can be changed into direct shape. So also like every geometric, we need the categories in Revit word. So you should give it a category. By the category, you can use something like this fashion. And I think it's a bit hard to understand, but let's take a look. So far, like these steps is okay. And now, like the B-rep still inside the Revit Rhino's word. And what this line says is that we go to the building categories, and inside the building categories, there's a generic model category. So you see, so once you check the building category, it labels as a enum, and enum means that there's already some set of key values, and inside that there's a direct, there's a generic model, yeah, this one. And this one is usually the category for direct shape. So you use this and you make it as an integer, and you pass to the element ID. Then these Revit categories object will have the class has a type of element ID, and you use direct shape create element. Direct shape create element. It requires a document you currently used and a category ID, and the output will be direct shape. So you see, we put the document we are currently used, and the category now is from generic model, and the output here will be our direct shape. And now we successfully not really transaction, make a change from Rhinos to now direct shape. Direct shape can be read in Revit. So here's how it works. And we put we return this as the direct shape. I think we can forgive these two lines. It's not important. And let's see how it goes. We use this create shape and put it into the sphere. So what I did here, this yellow one is we are currently working on. What I did here wasn't correct. So we should do we should use our create shape, create sphere function we just defined in down there, and use the document we currently use, and the radius from Grasshopper's input. Yeah, this should make the work. Let me check again. Okay. You can use sphere too, but I think it's not necessary, but I'll do it anyway. So A equal to yes. So this should be fine. Now, this is strange that every time it asked about the tokens. So there's something. A certain assembly Rhino comes. So I think that my Rhino inside Revit DLL is kind of has some problem. Like sometimes it's out of date, but I just add the new one. So I'm not sure it's the bug or something, but yeah, it works. So you go to, so maybe disable this one, and sorry, and I delete this one, and now let's say we create a really huge sphere. The transaction does not value an aside yet. Okay, sorry. Apparently it has a name, it needs a name, so we will not be able to without a proper name. Just giving my name. And okay. Though this warning here, but we didn't make the sphere to our Revit world again. There were warning is something related to and can also make a very tiny sphere. Yeah. So なんかここまで大丈夫ですか？
大丈夫です。問題ないです。
大丈夫です。同じようなエラーが起きましたけど、DLL もう一回紐付けたらできました。なんか同じトークンエラーが出ました。
それを時々。
時々なりますよね。
Okay. Okay. So I'm just gonna disable this. And because the code related to Revit is a bit messy, I think. So instead of coding along the side, I will try to explain with the Revit API documents to see what is necessary as an input. And the next things will be Rhino, will be noding code. And yeah, this is the every code for the first one. Oh, and before jumping to the next exercise, I have some thought, and maybe it's not correct, but I like to share. If I made something wrong, please correct me. So I think that the way we use indirect shape, and even in the Revit tab, if you see the, where is it here? So if your Rhino inside Revit works properly, you should have this Revit tag. In that tag, there you have these direct shapes categories. And what does this direct shape important is basically if you want to bring your geometry directly from Rhino to Revit, I think the most simple way is use direct shape. And what is direct shape exactly? I found it, you can see, I think something here. This is my blog, and you see, I tried to figure out what is direct shape. Is it any difference from IFC? So it says this class is used to store external created geometric shapes. Primarily intended used for importing shapes from other data formats such as IFC. So I think that although I never really touch IFC in depth, but I think the underlying like direct shape is one entry point that Revit can connect with other geometric modeling software. So either use IFC file format or use this direct shape on like the underline should be the same. It's either you use Rhino inside Revit or you output as IFC and re-input inside the Revit. So we just use another function to make these things work. And I'm not sure if I am correct, but to me it's like, oh, so if you want to use direct shape, you better put it as a generic model, and the direct shape is nothing more than just like IFC. Is my current point of view, but maybe it's wrong. And the next thing will be use the direct shape and node encode. And if you see the official guide, it says some benefit. Okay, and also the other things needed to be mentioned in the exercise one is that it mentions something called in-queue actions, but I found some data. I found some information says that the in-queue actions is out of date. So just I think we can just ignore this part, and it's not so important to us at this point. It's just the old time function. So even if you try this code here, it will not success, I think. And here it talks about the transaction. Yeah. Okay. So next thing will be node encode. I'm not sure if you are familiar with node encode, but I think many of you heard about it before. So I will just give a brief introduction. So node encode is basically you can bind in all of your components, like everything here into your code. So we call node encode. And so what is node encode with the Rhino inside? Apparently, like you have this convenience direct shape components, and you don't want to recreate it in your code. You can just use node encode instead. So in this section, like in this part, I will give you what exactly how it works, and you will take a look about it. So before you do anything, you have to identify the name of each components. And one thing I usually do, maybe it's not the most fastest way, but I usually do is I script a CSharp script, and inside I use this node encode. I think okay, use this line, node encode dot components dot node encode functions get dynamic members name. So these functions reads every names of your components inside your current Grasshopper. So you see, I found it here. So you can see those Rhino inside components will with prefix of Rhino inside and the names following on. So the whole strings will be its whole name. So the things I'm gonna to do is we use, for example, we will show it. We're gonna show. For example, here we have a cube, and we identify as a cube. You see, because it connects to the direct shape, using correct document project 1. I'm not sure. Do you have the same warnings as I did here? Using current document project 1. While you open it. Sorry. Material. Do you have same problem with this warning? I'm not sure how I tackle this problem, but usually is something wrong with the connection. So I might just reopen my Revit once again. Yeah. Sorry. Do you have the same problem? なんか同じウォーニングが出ています。
出てます。はい。
これってワーニングなんですか？同じのは出てますけど。 using current document project 1って出てますけど、ノードは動いてます。
なんか僕試してみたの時を無事だったけど、
あ、
本当だ。
開き直したら消えました。
そうですね。これがなぜかわかんないけど。
たまにありますよ。
いや、そうです。Okay. So like the in this part, noding code, I try to reduplicate, like make the same logic as this. Once I have the B-wrap in Rhino, I put in this direct shape. This is add geometric direct shape component and add the glass material to this geometry. And you can see I click the cube I just made in Revit. It shows the category is generic model. So once again, back to the fact I just said, the direct shape usually be identified as the generic model. And if you want to see the material, you should check the realistic, I guess. So it's a little bit like this. Shit, okay. And how we're gonna do is the Rhino Insight noding code will be, first we need to know how we get the category. So we use these methods to get a category. Now we use the OST walls to make our category a wall category. And this is just one line. And now I try to gradually input. So maybe I do another cube here. And this cube, I assign this one. Yeah, okay. So this is another sense. So far, like this means that if you see like a B-wrap attached to a current component, but I do a B-wrap attached to my CSharp script and make the scenes work, the sensing work. So this replace this. And the next will be this replace the whole of the scenes. And what exactly happened inside this one is something look like this. So we should look line by line before everything. Like you can notice that there's two inputs here. Like originally there's a 4, but we did things very simply. So we just need these two. So we get rid of the name and the category, but we still need to identify inside here. So see, like the problem, one of the problem will be, okay, so I have these Revit materials in my Grasshopper, but how can I identify it in my C# script? Because there's no types for Revit, right? So there's no Revit casting. So for one thing you need to know is that I use the object. So it takes, because the object is everything's father class, I guess. So the objects can represent everything. So there's no type error. And once you read it as an object into a script, you use as a keyword to make it the Revit's material. So I use as db.material. So now this gas material objects will have the Revit materials class. Is a type, is a objects on belongs to that type. And the next is I'll find the current materials component from noding code. So I using the Rhino noding code just for convenience, and I use this find component keyword to find the Rhino inside current materials. How do I know these names? Because I did it previously. I searched the names here. So if you're curious about what is the components find component, you can do Rhino comment test the find comments need the full name. So that's why important. What is important, we need to know the names of the component exactly the same. And once you put it here, now these current materials will be component function import. This is the return type of this find component. And the other thing will be geometric direct shape. We use these two in this script, but currently we use just add geometric direct shape geometric. And how it works is see here, something like here. So the name of this component currently in our script will be add geo direct shape, and we use evaluate function. So what exactly what I'm talking about is you go to the component function info class. Remember, this is the return type of the find component by name, and there's a evaluate function. And in the evaluate function, it asks the enumerable arguments. This is just another way to say, please give me a list of input. So what exactly of the list of input? I create a list of objects. It's more like arrow, but array of objects, and I give the inputs one by one. And these 4 inputs corresponds to these 4 input. So like in component terms, the name and the category. So I have these get categories, which gets me the words categories, and the geometry we input as a BREP, and the material, the glass material, I just recasting it. So this will be all of the arguments, and I make the keep tree as a false, but I think you can make it true if you want to keep the tree data tree structures in your further work. And now it's very simple, just 1, so we don't need to take care of it. I make it false, and there's another like warning string warnings. Array of strings takes the warning, and this can make everything work. So now this DS elements takes all the output from this from the loading code, and then we output it. And the output type is here. But one thing notice that is we're all coding Rhino common. like the in Grasshopper. So we don't need to specify the output. Like here you can make it db.directShape as the output. It's fine, but just make it object. It can contains everything. It's like make your life easy from transaction types. And this can get things work. And it should better to add this line to make sure there's like these two things works. So actually in this one, you don't need to query material because we input it. And so you can make this one just here. And okay, still works fine. And for the get categories, you can either use the function here, or you can just give a category you find from the building category enum, and then should put everything you know as the input. Then this can replace this one. Yeah, the lessons would be I chose these two, like only brep and get everything work here. So just make this, sorry, maybe I create one more. I'm not sure if it works with the cylinder, let's say. So set the brep, okay, since yeah, it works. So basically the same thing. We request, we find these two in noding code, and we try to combine that. So I use double time, but the one thing I found is that like we don't really need inputs here, right? Like these two, I just make it blank or null, and you will notice, okay, and just serve as a default, and our new materials will be put here as a 0. Like we take the first elements of new materials as input. Like usually, like in the old, this case, I just use glass materials from casting. It's from this one. Just make something like this, and preview of this one. Yeah, it's the same glass materials. Okay. Okay. Arigato. Did I make it clear so far? Or there's something like strange to you? Okay, and a little things that I'm not sure why the official guide wrote it this way, and I think my way works, so we should get rid of the guides. So if you take a look about the current guide, it says basically we try to do this. I tried to do the same thing as it did, but I think the version you use is very old. So you use instead of using material, you use color, and use this color to make this new material. But the way like it dot invoke, like dot invoke is another method from component function info. So if you see here, but we currently use evaluate from component function info. This is from noding code, and you certainly have another code invoke, and you use quite the same way, and it requires some argument as the evaluates requires. And apparently the guide use .invoke, but I didn't make it work with .invoke. So I think this is just don't work. You should we should use evaluate instead. Like by using evaluate, we can like make the input as none or nothing really, but it still work. But with invoke, I didn't really make it work. So if you find it hard to follow the code provided by guide official guide, I feel the same way. Yeah, and there will be the end of this guide, and the next things will be from a little another example, I think. And this example, I tend to make a Revit rebar tagging from Grasshopper. So we know Grasshopper is good at scripting. I think it's more stable for Dynamo. So I think if you want to develop something, like it's better to use Grasshopper, that's my opinion. So the less code will be like this. And we can take a look on the reference here. So basically, I want to do is I want to create rebars from a bunch of curves in Grasshopper. So my final goal is to input a lot of Grasshopper's curves and make it into the steel bar taken in Revit World. And this is the function we're gonna use. There's a bunch of inputs, and I think we can learn something by following along what exactly it is. So what I did here is I made a random 2 point, and distance will be 2000. And then make a line and duplicate it. And think should forget about this. And okay, so it's very generic. And if you take a look on the Revit at this point, yeah, there's still links. So, but it doesn't recognize the red line as any models in Revit World because we didn't send it yet. We either send it as the direct shape, but the direct shape will be the generic model type, and which I don't want it. So I want the model be steel bar, the takings categories. So that's the reason why I need to use this function. So previously, like these two, we bring models into Revit World with direct shape, but this one, I bring the model into Grasshopper within the Grasshopper rebar. So I made line, duplicated, and made a bounding box. And this bounding box is mainly serves as a host. And why it needs a host? Because apparently in rebar documents, it needs a host. Where is the host? Sorry, documents, the elements. So means that this rebars belongs to some other, like another element. So these elements owns these rebars. So I made this B wraps as a direct shape as the host of the rebars. And what the other things we need normal, and we need a bunch of curves. And now we have a bunch of curves from here, right? We have a bunch of curves. And now we need normals. And normals in XYZ fashion. It's not the same as 0.3D in Rhino fashion. So we will need to cast it inside it. And also there's rebar hook orientation. So you can think of rebar as has starts and ends. Apparently we can adjust the hook type with Revit API SDK, so that we can do it afterward. And sound out just really confusing. I'm not sure like what to put in, but yeah, this is the documents means that the current usually means the current Revit API document, the Revit document you are opened. And rebar styles, it has its own class, so we need to tackle it. And then there's two types of rebars in Revit world. One is standard, the other is stir up, and we can choose either standard stir type further. But inside our code, we just open it. It's a token issue, but yeah, just I want to do it as the this one do. So once the tag goes false, we didn't do anything. But once it clicks, like in the Revit, it should generalize all of those steel rebars for us. So here you see that we have our tagging. We have the rebar, and it's not a generic model. It's not direct shape. Pass by direct shape is rebar. So what is the difference between these categories and generic shape? Apparently, like if you identify inside, like in very specific category, it owns your property. So you can do some other stuff here. So sure, maybe you can make length 3000. Does it make one? Yeah, so like something like this. But if you're not, you're passing in with the direct shape, you don't have these useful properties in Grasshopper words. So I make bounding box as a host element, and let's dive inside. The way I use is the same. So apparently Rhino didn't know the Revit Revit's classes. So after we input these libraries, it should started to know, okay, I can casting into database elements as a host. And then here I use the transaction. It's basically the same. So we have these transaction blocks. Transaction has its own name, and we bypass the document, and it has the straws and the ends, the commit, commit, and we do change inside it. And what is the change will be, okay, we will have the host and have this method help me to generalize rebars. And this method called create rebars, and it takes the document host element curved in Rhino and normal from XYZ normal. So if you see here, I basically want to like one by one put into the input, and I use some convenience way from link. So I just create, let me think. Okay, so here, like see, create from curves, and there's this list curve, but this curve, like this curve is Revit's curve, is not Rhino's curve. So you have to casting the Rhino's curve to Revit's curve first. So that's what I did. I used the link to select every element. Now the element means every single curve. Now it's every single lines to curve. Like the curve to curve means the Rhino curve to Revit curve. And now it knows that every single curve becomes to Revit's curve. And this can be the input for, sorry, for this. And send us the bar type. So if you look the bar type, you will find it down here. And the way you can create a bar type is by rebar bar type dot create, and you give the current document. You should create a bar type, and also send us the hook type. You can find it under the structure rebar hook type dot create, and you specify some arguments. Let's take a look. Bar type. Hook type members. Property. Create. You got this. And you have angle modifier. You just put it in. I put the math pi as the angle and the modifier 90. So think that I'm not very sure like hook type means something, but in my previous trial, like you should definitely can get this hook, like a little hook here, by just change a little parameters here. And also you should get rid of this. Is just for the showing the sensing 3D. Yeah. So once you have all the inputs and also step set hook type things, then you just use this create rebar and create a rebar. And once you have create rebar, like I did something like delete the hook here, but I think if you don't delete the hook, still be fine. I'm not sure. Rebar. Okay. Let's make a little bit. Yeah, so like you see here's like something happened with my hook. Like maybe that's the one reason like I have to delete the hook. But you can see apparently like here, we don't have hook at end, but like here, like we have the rebar hook 180s. Yeah, so it's a lot of properties inside Revit that we can use by the Revit APIs from here to there. Okay. Like any problems while you try this one? It's yeah. Like this is not necessarily, yeah. This is not necessary. 大丈夫そうですか？
問題ないです。
では、多分最後です。I think it will be the end of my lecture. めっちゃシンプル。
いや、とてもわかりやすくてありがとうございました。まず、レコーディングを止めるんで、ちょっと待っててください。
はい。